All right, good morning, Cedar Hill. So today I want to speak briefly on the topic of patience. And when I say patience, I don't mean the kind of patience that allows you to endure a trip to home affairs or navigate rush hour traffic without becoming flustered. I'm speaking about a spiritual patience. And if we look at the book of Exodus, chapter 32, it's a story we know well, the story of the gold calf. And Moses has gone up onto the mountain. He's been there. He's there for 40 days, so we're not entirely sure when this occurs during that time frame, but the Israelites become restless. They decide that, we don't know what has happened to Moses and we need to make a plan. And so this is what it says in verse 32, chapter 32 rather, verse 1. Now when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us gods that shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." It says Moses delayed. And when there's a delay in our lives, specifically a spiritual delay, it's important that we don't try and speed things up. We don't make a plan. We don't, by the ability of our own hands, try and expedite God's plans and purposes. Because if we look at the Israelites, that's what they did. They created gods, to fill in that gap that they were experiencing, to fill in that void that they're experiencing. This was a period of time that they deemed to be inconvenient and they needed to do something about it. And this is the risk that we run even today. We can be experiencing a God-ordained delay and not interpret it that way and start to try and help God along, to speed up the process and get caught up doing all the things, that we shouldn't be doing. And when we do, we start to put our hope in those things. We put our hope in the ability of our own hands and in our own abilities. And in essence, we commit idolatry just as the Israelites did. And that's obviously not something that we want to do. Idolatry is a big no-no. Maybe a little bit more subtle than what it was in biblical times, but it's certainly no less prevalent in today's world and in the church. So it's important that when God delays, we don't try to help him along. We don't try to add to his plan. In Galatians chapter 3 verse 3, Paul says, it's foolish to try and finish in the flesh what was begun in the spirit. And when there's a delay and we try and make things happen, that's essentially what we're doing. We're trying to finish in the flesh what was begun in the spirit. When God speaks a prophetic word over our lives, when God plants a seed in our heart, that is something that's begun in the spirit, and we can't, nor should we try and finish that in the flesh. We shouldn't resort to the work of our own hands to bring to fruition the things that God has placed in our heart or the things that God has spoken over our lives. But that's my encouragement this morning, is that we wouldn't try to finish in the flesh what God has begun in the spirit, that we would trust the process, we would trust that God is at work, and we would trust that God is intentional. So if there's a delay, it's intentional on God's part and it serves a purpose. God bless you, Cedar Hill.